अस्सलाम वालेकुम, आप देखें ब्रेकिंग पॉइंट। मैं हूं मोहम्मद मालिक। पिछले कुछ दिनों से एक नाम पाकिस्तान में हाउस होल्ड नाम बन गया है, कावे मुसावी। ये वो इरानियन आदमी हैं जिनकी कंपनी थी ब्रॉडशीट और उनके मुख्तलिफ़ किस्म के दावे आ रहे हैं। अभी पाकिस्तान दावा आ रहा है तकरीबन $30 मिलियन ठुक गए हैं पाकिस्तान को नैब की नाअहली की वजह से या करप्शन की वजह से। तो वक्त आने पे फैसला होगा, लेकिन कुछ बातें बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट हो रही हैं। एक क्या कहते हैं, एक धमाके से कर दिए इन्होंने। कभी कहते हैं कि फ़ारूक नाइक ने हमें ख़रीदने की कोशिश की, कभी कहते हैं मुझे नवाज शरीफ ने ख़रीदने की कोशिश की, कभी कहते हैं कि एक जनरल मलिक थे कोई, उन्होंने आके कट मांगा मिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर्स का, और कभी शेरपाओ की बात हो रही है, कभी किसी की बात हो रही है, कभी कहते हैं कि बिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर्स थे जो हम बिल्कुल पहुंच गए थे वहाँ पे नवाज शरीफ ख़ानदान के, आसिफ जरदारी के, बाकी लोगों के, और फिर हमें रोक दिया गया। लग ये रहा है कि पूरा एक वर्डिक्ट पेश कर रहे हैं पाकिस्तान के ऊपर। और कल प्राइम मिनिस्टर इमरान खान ने भी एक निजी टेलीविज़न के इंटरव्यू में कहा कि बिल्कुल मैं अब इनसे, हमारी कंपनी से हम फॉर्मली पूछेंगे, हमें तमाम तफसीलात दें और हम इसको इन्वेस्टिगेट भी करेंगे। 3-4 नाम अब एक हाउस होल्ड ने पाकिस्तान में बन गए हैं। ज़फ़र अली एडवोकेट, तारिक फवाद मलिक, जनरल मलिक हुएवर, फिर वो जो डार साहब का एक नाम लिया था कि जी वो नवाज शरीफ की तरफ से आए थे मुझे ख़रीदने। इन सब के ऊपर बड़े सवाल उठ रहे हैं। लेकिन इन तमाम चीज़ों में जो एक चीज़ छुप रही है वो ये है कि ख़ुद इनकी क्रेडिबिलिटी क्या है। हमने आज का जो हम प्रोग्राम कर रहे हैं नाज़रीन, हम थोड़ा सा इन पे फोकस कर रहे हैं। बाकी इश्यूज़ तो आप सारे सुन चुके हैं कि कंपनी है क्या। वेरी क्विकली मैं आपको 2-3 बातें बता देता हूँ। इस कंपनी के पहले जो चेयरमैन थे कागज़ों में वो थे एडगर जेरोम हैं या जेरेमी हैं, उनको कहेंगे एडगर जेरोम जेरी जेम्स। इनके बारे में कहा जाता है कि ये एक बैंकर थे और ये उस कंपनी को चला रहे थे, उस पर भी बात करेंगे। बहरहाल ये कंपनी फॉर्म होती है आइल ऑफ मैन में। ये एक ऑफशोर कंपनी है जो मई 2000 में फॉर्म होती है, और अगले ही महीने जून में 2000 में इनको ये बहुत बड़ा कॉन्ट्रैक्ट पाकिस्तान से मिल जाता है जिसमें ये 200 लोगों के इनको नाम दिए जाते हैं और इन्होंने उस पर तमाम इन्वेस्टिगेशन करके एसेट्स आइडेंटिफाई करने हैं, रिकवर करने हैं, और 20% उसका इनको मिलना था। खैर फिर 2003 के अंदर ये कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कैंसिल हो जाता है अक्टूबर में। ये कोइंसिडेंस नहीं है कि 2003 के अंदर ही 5 अक्टूबर को NRO आया था, और अब कहानी ये बनाई जा रही है कि शायद इतना प्रेशर था NRO का देने का कि नैब ने जल्दी आके इन लोगों से लंदन में दूसरे मुज़ाकरात किए, और जो बाकी पैसे पहले दिए गए सेटलमेंट के अंदर वो उस वजह से जो कोताहियाँ हुई। लेकिन वो इतनी सिंपल बात नहीं है। कंपनी की क्रेडिबिलिटी का हाल ये है कि 2003 के अंदर इन पर मुकदमा कर देते हैं कि फॉर्मर लीगल एडवाइज़र, जो ब्रॉडशीट के फॉर्मर एडवाइज़र हैं, वो कहते हैं मेरे 29,000 पाउंड कि मेरी फ़ीस नहीं, लीगल फ़ीस नहीं दी गई, सिर्फ 29,000 पाउंड। एंड दिस कंपनी इज़ सपोज टू बी वन ऑफ द बेस्ट कंपनीज इन द वर्ल्ड। एनीवे उस पर फिर उनके जनाब ऑर्डर हो जाते हैं। वो वाइंडिंग अप ऑर्डर हो जाता है मार्च 2005 में। अब ये 2003 तक इससे बड़ी कंपनी दुनिया में कोई नहीं थी, बेहतरीन कोई नहीं थी। 29,000 पाउंड पे वाइंड अप हो जाती है, और 2008 जो, और फिर सिमिलरली 2007 अप्रैल में ये कंपनी डिज़ोल्व भी हो जाती है। अब इन द मीन टाइम ये सारा हो रहा है। इधर जब ये कैंसिल होता है तो फिर सेटलमेंट की बातचीत शुरू करनी जाती है, और नैब वाले भी सेटलमेंट कर रहे हैं। और अभी आप देखेंगे कि आज के प्रोग्राम में मैंने मुसावी साहब से ही इंटरव्यू किया हुआ है, और वो बड़ी अजीब बातें करते हैं, वो भी अभी इस पर बात करूँगा मैं। फिर जब ये नेगोशिएशन चल रही होती हैं तो अहमद बिलाल सूफ़ी भी उस वक्त प्रोमिनेंट लॉयर हैं पाकिस्तान के, ये भी पाकिस्तान की तरफ गए होते हैं। ये वहाँ कुछ सवालात उठाते हैं लंदन हाई कमीशन में कि भाई आप जो कह रहे हैं कि जेरेमी साहब कि ये हमने एक नई कंपनी बना ली। जेरेमी साहब ने इन द मीन टाइम एक ब्रॉडशीट कोलोराडो कंपनी बना लेते हैं। ये कंपनी तो डिज़ोल्व होगी आइल ऑफ मैन वाली, ये जाके एक कोलोराडो अमेरिका में एक कंपनी बना लेते हैं, और अब ये कहते हैं कि मैं उस कंपनी के राइट्स इस कंपनी के पास हैं, तो हमारे जहाँ से कॉम्पनसेशन है हमें दे दीजिए। पाकिस्तान का जो एग्रीमेंट था ब्रॉडशीट के साथ, उसमें एक शिक बड़ी क्लियर है जिसके तहत कोई भी ना पाकिस्तान ना ये कंपनी ब्रॉडशीट ओरिजिनल जो थी अपने राइट्स किसी को नहीं दे सकती थी, साइन नहीं कर सकती थी दूसरे पार्टनर की रिटन परमिशन के बगैर। तो पहला सवाल तो उठना चाहिए था पाकिस्तान की तरफ से, हेलो आपने कैसे साइन कर दिया, हमें तो आपने नहीं बताया। बहरहाल वो उनसे कोई नहीं पूछता। और इंटरेस्टिंग बात यह है کہ وہ لنڈن میں جب ان کو کہتے ہیں میں آپ کو دے دوں گا سارے کاغذ دے دوں گا، اٹھا کے آپ $1.5 ملین ان کو پکڑا دیتے ہیں۔ یہ $1.5 ملین ایسے ہی نہیں دیے جاتے، یہ اگر جب تک کٹس نہ ہو کچھ نہ ہو تو یہ مذاق نہیں ہے، $1.5 ملین آپ ان کو دے دیں گے۔ 2-3 چیزیں ہم نے اس میں دیکھی اور پھر ایک بڑی انٹرسٹنگ چیز ہے، جب ہم فیصلہ دیکھتے ہیں یہ جو ہائی کورٹ آف جسٹس بزنس اینڈ پراپرٹی کورٹس آف انگلینڈ اینڈ ویلز جسٹس ٹیئر کی یہ جو فیصلہ ہے اس میں انٹرسٹنگ چیز بتاتے ہیں۔ وہ کہتے ہیں اس دور میں آج تک ہمیں بتایا گیا کہ صرف جی اس سے پہلے $1.5 ملین جو ہوتا تھا نا وہ لے گیا تھا، جیرمی فراڈ سے کر کے لے گیا، صرف وہ نہیں ہے، ایک $2.25 ملین اور بھی اس فیصلے میں لکھا ہوا ہے کہ اس دوران میں ایک اور کمپنی بنائی گئی تھی IAR۔ یہ کانٹریکٹ بڑا مزیدار ہے، انہوں نے بانٹا ہوا تھا کہ ایک براڈ شیٹ یہ کام کرے گی، پھر ایک IAR کمپنی بنا دے گی جو دنیا کے کچھ حصوں میں وہ کام کرے گی۔ یہ کھانچے اس طرح کے بنے ہوئے تھے، اور پھر کس طرح یہ مال بٹتا ہے، آپ نے جو بار بار ایک نام سنا ہوگا طارق فواد ملک کا، تو جب انہوں نے ایفیڈیوٹ دیا جیرمی نے ان کو پاکستان والوں کو، انہوں نے کہا کہ تقریباً جو ہے نا $1.25 ملین ہمارا ریپرزنٹیٹیو آپ سے جہاں بھی ہم ڈیسائیڈ کریں گے وہاں لے لے گا، $1.5 ملین ایک لے لیا، دوسرے پیسے اب یہی پتہ کرنا ہے کہ وہ بھی دیے گئے ہیں کہ نہیں دیے گئے۔ ڈے 1 سے لگ یہ رہا ہے کہ ایک بہت بڑا سکیم ڈیزائن ہوا تھا، پہلے دن سے اس میں پیسے بٹ رہے ہیں، پہلے دن سے اس میں اس وقت نائب افسران یہ تو بہت تعریف کریں جنرل امجد کی، بٹ وداؤٹ کاسٹنگ اینی ڈاؤٹس آئی تھنک ان سے ہی سوالات شروع ہونے چاہیے اوپر سے لے کے نیچے تک کہ یہ ہو کیا رہا ہے اور کس طرح یہ اتنی جلدی پیسے بٹے گئے اور کوئی مان نہیں رہا، اور آج ہر بات ان کی سچ ہوتی ہے۔ ہم نے آج کے انٹرویو میں آپ دیکھیں گے کہ ہم نے ان سے 3-4 باتیں فوکس کی۔ ہم نے کہا ہمیں اپنی کمپنی کے بارے میں بتائیں، اس سے پہلے کوئی نہیں جانتا، اور آپ بتائیں آپ کے کریڈینشلز کیا ہیں۔ ہمیں انہوں نے کہا کہ میں نے میکسیکو کے اندر بہت بڑے کام کیے، وہ کرپشن یہ وہ اسپیسیفک نہیں بتائی۔ میں نے کہا کوئی آپ کی سکسیسفل کیا انڈیورز ہیں، انہوں نے کہا میں نے ایک ایرانی ڈیسیڈنٹ پتہ نہیں جنیوا میں پکڑوا دیا، ایک ایرانی ڈیسیڈنٹ جو تھا وہ آدمی تھا بڑا قاتل تھا، یہ تھا وہ تھا، 1-2 انڈیویجولز کی کہانیاں سنائیں۔ ان کی کمپنی کی آج تک کوئی ویب سائٹ نہیں ہے، ان کی کمپنی کی کوئی ٹویٹر تو چھوڑ دیں، کوئی اس قسم کا کوئی جو ڈکلیئرڈ کوئی ایڈورٹائزنگ یا پبلسٹی مٹیریل وہ نہیں ہوتا۔ یہ بات نہیں کہ دنیا میں اس طرح کے کام نہیں ہوتے، ڈیلائٹ بہت بڑا گروپ ہے جو یہ کام کرتا ہے، کرول بہت بڑی کمپنی، میں آپ کو بہت کمپنیوں کا نام بتا سکتا ہوں، سب کی ایک ہسٹری ہے۔ ہم جب دیکھتے ہیں ہمیں مساوی صاحب کی نہ اپنی ہسٹری نظر آتی ہے، وہ ایک آکسفورڈ کے پڑھے ہوئے آدمی ہیں، بالکل بڑے شارپ ہیں، سمارٹ ہیں، ہی از اے ویری سمارٹ لائر، کوئی شک نہیں ہے، لیکن جب یہ انویسٹیگیشنز کے کام آتے ہیں تو باتیں ہمیں نظر آتی ہیں، اور آپ انٹرویو میں دیکھیں گے ہمیں اسپیسیفکس نہیں نظر آتی۔ میرا آج کا مقصد کسی کو ایگزاگنیٹ کرنا نہیں ہے اس پروگرام کا، جو باتیں سیریسلی ہوئی ہیں سیریس چارج انہوں نے لگائے ہیں۔ انہوں نے کہا کہ تقریباً $1 بلین ہمیں اس وقت ہمیں پتا تھا سنگاپور موو ہوئے ہیں سعودی عربیہ سے، انہوں نے باقی لوگوں کی باتیں کی، یہ سارے انویسٹیگیٹ ہونے ہوں گے، لیکن بہت سے سوالات اٹھتے ہیں ان کے اوپر۔ پھر ان سے میں نے پوچھا کہ یہ جو آپ کے جن لوگوں نے آپ ہی کے جو چیئرمین تھے وہ آپ کو ٹوپی آپ کو لگا گئے، ٹوپی پہنا گئے، تو آپ تو خود جج نہیں ہیں ایسے لوگوں کے، آپ دوسروں کو کیا جج کریں گے؟ تو انہوں نے کہا نہیں بڑا اچھا آدمی تھا، سب کچھ تھا، اور وہ آپ کو پتہ ہے غربت میں فوت ہوا تھا۔ یہ جو ایڈگر جیرمی تھا جس نے $1.5 ملین پاکستان سے بھی لیے، اور بھی کافی اس کے کافی کنٹروورشل ہسٹری ہے، اس نے 2011 میں پیرس میں خودکشی کر لی، چھلانگ لگائی، ہی جمپڈ آف کوئی 5ویں یا 6ٹھے فلور سے ایک ہوٹل کی بیلکنی سے، اینڈ ہی کمیٹڈ سوسائڈ۔ ان کے بارے میں جب پتہ کیا تو ان کے کافی سوال اٹھتے ہیں۔ انہوں نے کہا بینکر تھا اور بڑا سالڈ آدمی تھا، لیکن بعد میں اسی سالڈ آدمی میں 2011 میں انہوں نے مقدمہ کر دیا کولوراڈو کی عدالت میں ایک، کہ اس کی سٹیٹ سے ہمیں کاغذ چاہیے، یہ چاہیے، انفارمیشن چاہیے، اور جب میں نے ان سے سوال کروں گا یہ تو روٹین کی چیزیں ہیں۔ ایک طرف اگر آپ ایک بندے کی انٹیگریٹی کی بات کرتے ہیں اور کہتے ہیں زبردست آدمی تھا، تو وہ دوسری دفعہ مقدمے بھی کریں تو کویسچن مارکس، اور وہی بندہ آپ کو ٹوپی بھی بنائے یا آپ کو لوٹ لے اور پورا فراڈ کرے پاکستان گورنمنٹ سے اور اس کی انٹیگریٹی کی یہ قسم کھائیں، عجیب سی بات ہے۔ ہم نے جب جیری جونز کے بارے میں پاکستان میں انویسٹیگیٹ کیا تو ان کے کافی کویسچنیبل سے عجیب سے کوئی بیک گراؤنڈ نکلی۔ بہت سے لوگوں نے ہمیں دعویٰ کیا پاور سرکلز کے کہ یہ شاید ایک CIA یا اس قسم کے آدمی تھے، مرحوم شریف الدین پیرزادہ کے ساتھ بہت ان کا تعلق تھا، دیکھے جاتے تھے، تو اس کی وجہ سے ان کا ایکسس تھا پاور سرکلز میں۔ اور لندن میں میری ایک شخص سے بات ہوئی جو پاکستان ڈیلیگیشن کا حصہ تھا نیگوسیشنز میں، اس نے کہا کہ سارے ان کو بڑی اچھی طرح جانتے تھے، और सारे बड़े कंफर्टेबल थे। तो जब जेरेमी ने कहा कि नो प्रॉब्लम, ये जितनी आपकी लीगल रिक्वायरमेंट्स हैं मैं इन प्लेस कर दूंगा, तो वो सब ने कहा हाँ ठीक है, और खड़क करके उसको $1.5 मिलियन का जो पहला चेक था पकड़ा दिया। एक और इंटरेस्टिंग बात, जब हमने ये केस में फैसला पढ़ा, हमारे पास जब डॉक्यूमेंट्स आए, तो जो सेटलमेंट एग्रीमेंट है ये बड़ी ज़बरदस्त चीज़ है माशाल्लाह। सेटलमेंट एग्रीमेंट के अंदर बड़ी जगह ब्लैंक थी कि जिन्होंने नई कंपनी बनाई हुई थी ब्रॉडशीट कोलोराडो वगैरह, उसके डेट ऑफ इनकॉर्पोरेशन ब्लैंक, ओनरशिप ब्लैंक, जो टेक्निकल चीज़ें थी वो ब्लैंक्स थे। हम समझे शायद हमारे पास वो ड्राफ्ट ही वो वाला आया है जिसमें ब्लैंक आउट किया हुआ है, लेकिन जब हमने ये केस पढ़ रहे थे, ये जो कोलोराडो वाला केस है, तो इसमें इंटरेस्टिंगली पूरा उन्होंने पॉइंट किया हुआ लॉयर्स ने कि ये जो सेटलमेंट एग्रीमेंट है इसमें तो ये चीज़ें ही नहीं हैं। सवाल ये है, जो नैब की तरफ से जिन लोगों ने साइन किया और गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पाकिस्तान की तरफ से, क्या उनको ये नज़र नहीं आया कि सेटलमेंट एग्रीमेंट में जिस कंपनी को वो पैसे पकड़ा रहे हैं उसकी इनकॉर्पोरेशन डेट नहीं है, उसके शेयर होल्डर्स का नाम नहीं है, उसका एड्रेस वगैरह इस किस्म की चीज़ें नहीं हैं, बेसिक चीज़ें जो सामने प्रिंटेड होती हैं। आप कोई मुझे ये कहे कि जी जनरल अमजद से लेके नीचे तक, खैर जनरल अमजद तो जल्दी चले गए थे, तो 2008 की सेटलमेंट्स हैं, पेमेंट्स हैं, सारा कुछ है, कि 2008 के अंदर जो लोग बैठे हुए थे, या तो वो इतने नालायक हैं कि उनको बेसिक डॉक्यूमेंटेशन का नहीं पता, या वो इतने चालाक और करप्ट हैं कि उन्होंने खुल के माल बनाया। एक चीज़ तो बड़ी क्लियर है, क्वेश्चन मार्क्स सबके ऊपर हैं, चाहे वो जरदारी साहब का रोल है फाइनेंशियल, चाहे वो नवाज शरीफ फैमिली का रोल है, चाहे वो शेरपाव साहब के ऊपर एलिगेशंस हैं, इसी तरह जिसका खोलने का अच्छा चट्टा खोलता जाता है, चाहे वो जो जनरल मलिक हैं, लेकिन नाइदर सवालात से मुबर्रा ये कंपनी भी नहीं है और हमारे ये मुसावी साहब भी नहीं है। ये बड़े सवालात हैं जिस पे गवर्नमेंट को पूछना चाहिए और जिस पे डिटेल में होना चाहिए और इनका हरफ आखिर नहीं होना चाहिए। अब इनसे आगे भी हम इस पर प्रोग्राम करेंगे, बट अभी आप पहले आए सुनते हैं कि मुसावी साहब क्या कहते हैं। Good evening, Mr. Musavi, and thank you so much for joining Hum News for a little discussion. Your recent interviews have created quite a stir in Pakistan, and serious issues have come up, and the amounts are staggering, the role of NAB and other people, a lot of questions. But one of the biggest mysteries is you yourself and your company. When we tried to Google you, quite honestly, we couldn't find anything. And when we have other asset recovery firms, you have Kroll, you have Deloitte, you have others, they have proper offices, proper structures. Then we find out that this was a shell company. Why a shell company? Then what's your record of asset recoveries and all that? Because all the people who have been burned by your recent interviews, they're creating a lot of questions, raising a lot of questions about your integrity and your, what you call, expertise also. Could we start with your company?
Well, let's see what the judge said. Speculation is cheap, but going before a high court judge in England and getting the damning judgment that he gave on NAB and the government of Pakistan is not cheap. It involves thousands of hours of investigation, tens of thousands of pages of documentation and evidence. And you say we were a shell company. Our adversary was a government, a mighty government that has nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. You explain to me in that case, if any of this nonsense about we are a shell company was true, why would the High Court judge give the damning judgment that he did and give us an award? Look, we are not self-publicists. We don't have an advertising budget, but we did spend millions on chasing thieves.
No, I'll tell you why this question was posed to you. Because when we see the record, your company was incorporated a month earlier in the Isle of Man, and a month later, it signs a massive contract with the government of Pakistan. So for the government to choose you, there had to be a past record. For the government to pick you up, there had to be a proven track record or something. Those two things were missing, and that's why a lot of questions are being asked. Why Broadsheet, when Broadsheet didn't have an experience, and Broadsheet was even listed there as a trading house, I believe.
Well, is that the end of the question? Would you like me to answer it?
Yeah, please.
First of all, it was my credentials. I had fought corrupt governments before. I testified before the United States Congress, massive corruption I had exposed in Mexico. I had very significant significant experience in fighting corrupt governments. The consequence of that, I was teaching a seminar on remedies in international human rights law, including corruption. Corruption is a human rights issue.
Mr. Musavi, could you kindly be more precise about what cases you did? I'm just trying to establish, like, okay, there was a tangible track record. When you talk about Mexico, was it from the platform of Broadsheet, or was it from the platform of Kaveh Muswi? How did it work?
No, I had dozens of other companies. We set up strictly a company after we were approached by the government of Pakistan solely and simply because of our experience, because of our academic knowledge of the evolution of the law in restitution, because of our understanding and ability to move the frontiers of the law through the jurisprudence that was evolving. Most of these fancy companies, they come to us to have legal views and legal opinions on where there are no obvious remedies in law, to try and find an equitable remedies. New law is good law, and judges like to make laws.
People who negotiated with you, I was talking to one of the lawyers, and what he said was that your other partner, Mr. Edgar Jerry James, like commonly he was called Jerry James, they said he probably was somebody who had worked with the US administration, probably had some CIA connections and all that. He was more of the security guy and the real job thing. You were more astute legally, and you were the lawyer, the legal brains behind it. And then that gentleman took you for a ride also. Then he committed suicide in mysterious circumstances. So there are a lot of questions that go begging about the company and about you and about other people. I mean, I don't mean to sound harsh on this, but genuinely, we need to know more about you and why your words should carry so much weight here.
Well, I was answering them until you interrupted me.
Sorry.
If I may continue, we were the only people, there were other bidders, we were the only people who agreed to do this free of charge. Other companies were like Kroll and other investigating companies wanted to invoice on a monthly basis. We were so confident of our ability to trace, find, freeze, and repatriate stolen assets that we said to General Musharraf's government, we'll do it free of charge. In other words, if we succeed, we'll take a percentage. If we don't succeed, it's our risk. And it was a no-brainer. So those who make these libelous accusations without any information, they ought to consider that our contract was a contingency fee contract. If we were not absolutely sure that we were capable of finding these assets, we would not have done what we did, which is to say, all you got to do is sign a sheet of paper. If you find money, we will be able to live. If you kill, you eat. If you don't kill, you don't eat. It's as simple as that.
You said you worked with the Mexican government also. If you could just tell me what company worked there, with what name. And secondly, did you ever have a contract like this, which said that even if your contract was terminated and the people mentioned in your targeted list and the government kept going after them, no matter for how long, you would still keep getting your commission? It was like, even if you weren't working on that anymore. Did you ever have another contract like this?
I'm sorry, that's a massive misrepresentation of the contract. That's not what the contract said. The contract said, with respect to the targets, the named targets on which we had started spending money and investigating the contract, the government had no right to rescind the contract. It was free to rescind the contract regarding anybody else. It's a complete, total, utter fabrication that's been misfed to journalists and the media. That is not what the contract said. And if that's the spin they're putting on it, they're lying to you. What's the next question?
I've just got a copy of that. Mr. Musavi, if I take you to 18.5 clause, it says, no notice of termination shall be applied to persons or entities registered by Broadsheet in accordance with the terms herein, in respect of which Broadsheet shall be allowed to continue its efforts to recover assets, and no termination shall be effected in respect thereof, and in respect of such registered persons or entities, the provision of this agreement shall be deemed to continue to apply and be operative. So even if termination had happened, you would still be like on it and or if the government did anything like that, you would still be receiving a commission, wouldn't you?
Are you a lawyer?
No, I've been sued many times.
Well, then I suggest you show that to a lawyer and see whether he agrees with you that that's the correct
This is a lawyer's opinion. That's why I'm asking. I just want to be clarified, because this is what a lawyer has pointed out to me.
I can tell you that the lawyer has pointed out to you the clause, but he has not pointed out to you that interpretation. The correct interpretation is as follows, and I don't think I'm going to repeat it again because it's not necessary.
Right.
It says, at my risk, could you please not interrupt me and listen? At my risk, I am prepared to spend millions of dollars chasing the thieves who have plundered Pakistan. But I am aware of the nature of the political system in Pakistan. The minute I come close to their money and I inform NAB, NAB is going to leak it to them, and they're going to remove them, or they're going to hide the money, which happened again and again and again. So with an abundance of caution, we knew that this possibility would happen, and events proved us right. That's exactly what happened in the case of a number of very prominent of those thieves, number of them. That's why we insisted, and that my insistence that clause was put in there. If we're going to spend money and we're going to hire investigators, detectives, accountants, other lawyers, photographers, people who would follow the individuals walking into expensive jewelry shops, photographing them, talking to the assistant in order to get a copy of the credit card, and then investigate which credit card they've used and how that credit card is settled on a monthly basis, from which bank, in which jurisdiction. These things cost money. Yeah. In order to do that, we wanted to be absolutely certain that as a result of our investigation, when we found the accounts of those thieves and when we fed the information to NAB, some crook in NAB would not simply pass the information to the thief and they would hide their money or remove it from that particular jurisdiction. So we said, we are prepared to enter this contract whereby we will fund the entire operation, but you commit not to cut us out halfway through the investigation. That is the correct interpretation of that clause.
That's perfectly understandable.
Not interpretation you put on it.
Mr. Musavi, did you at any time promise or indicate that you would be in a position to recover a multiple of billions of dollars or rupees, specifically from Mr. Asif Zardari and the Sharif family, and it wasn't like turned down or something?
I don't understand the question. Can you repeat that question, please?
Did you at any time promise NAP people or claim that you had knowledge of billions of dollars of assets and everything of Asif Zardari and Nawaz Sharif in particular? Because I'll tell you why I'm asking you. We were told that you made very tall promises, and when you were asked to come up with something, there wasn't anything. So that's when they started questioning your, what you call expertise or whatever.
Please don't make me laugh. I mean, the record of this, the record of the discussion is there. I didn't know the name of Mr. Asif Zardari from Adam. Nawaz Sharif I'd read about in the newspapers and all. He was Zardari was a opaque figure who happened to have married the late Mrs. Bhutto. Why would I know about his billions? What I did know is I know how to find stolen billions. Stolen billions is the kind of money that smells. Ordinary money doesn't smell. Stolen billion does smell. And there are ways where the thieves try to make that smell go away. It's called money laundering. It's called mechanisms that the law is beginning to catch up with them. I consider myself to be an expert on that. That's what. So the suggestion that I made representations to NAB that we would find billions and billions is a complete fabrication. What we said is it's plausible, and it has been stated in the media, that billions and billions have been stolen. If they have been stolen, as sure as eggs is eggs, we're going to find it. I never, never, never stated anything about the assets of Zardari or Sharif. What I did say at the time when the General Musharraf government were adamant they were only going to go after the Sharifs, we adamantly said we are not going to be part of a witch hunt. We're not prepared to do that. What we would like to do is we'd like to have all the previous governments. Now, what would I know about the previous governments? I mean, anybody who's got 2 cells in their brain would think that's an implausible suggestion. We simply said, if we have assistance and if you cooperate according to the requirements of international law, we will be able to find these. And the judgment of Sir Anthony Evans is crystal clear. We were too effective for the comfort of thieves who were running NAB and the government of Pakistan. The crooks who have plundered the government, the people of Pakistan, they got very nervous because we came too close. If anything, we performed too well for the comfort of the fraudsters who began to take over after General Amjad.
Mr. Musavi, छोटी सी break up, please stay with us. Welcome back to the show. 2-3 names keep popping up. One is Jerry James. Obviously, he was given as the chairman of the company and all. Could you tell us about his background? And the other name that keeps popping up is Tariq Fawad Malik, the same guy who was authorized later on illegally or whatever by Jerry James to collect 1.5 million on his behalf or on behalf of Broadsheep, and then we all know the legal consequences, all the things that happened. But could you tell us more about these 2 chaps?
Well, the judge spoke about them, and they were the co-conspirators with the government of Pakistan to defraud us, the real broadsheet. If you don't believe me, get a copy of the judgment and you will see. And then properly, this question should be addressed to NAB, which the judge found co-conspired with Mr. Malick and Mr. Jerry James to defraud us. And of course, defraud.
The reason I'm asking you is Jerry James was your partner, wasn't he? So he was originally, you guys were together, so you must have known him.
The only partner that one has for life is the Almighty up there. And he has a habit of taking each of us after 80, 90 years. We are not obliged to be partners with anybody for the whole of our lives. And nor was I obliged to be a partner with anybody for the whole of my life. For a specific period, we were partners. And in good faith, we were working. And our paths began to digress. And as the judge says, they behaved in a way that it is tantamount to effective finding of a fraud upon us. So they may have been partners, but they became the partners of the government of Pakistan in a conspiracy to defraud Broadsheet. Don't believe me? Read the judgment.
No, that's where I picked it from. I picked it from the judgment. That's what I'm going to ask you, because since you knew the man, and then he died in mysterious circumstances, so the impression we get is somebody with a CIA background or intelligence background. He's also a mystery in there. So I thought maybe you could throw some light on it. What do you know about him? I mean, even when good times were there, was he an ex-CIA? Was he an intelligence guy? What was he?
Compared with the thieves we were investigating, he was a kindergarten child in a nursery, compared with the crooks that we were investigating. So I think your attention ought to be on the people who, General Musharraf, who is not exactly a paragon of virtue at the Oxford Union, when I openly in front of the cameras asked him, what happened to NAB, General? And he said, Mr. Musavi, I was ordered to hold elections by the Supreme Court, and I did, and all the crooks came back to power. I think your focus should be, if you're looking for crooks, Jerry James was a nursery boy compared with the crooks that we were investigating. He died in poverty. He was not ex-CIA. It's a complete, utter fabrication. Jerry James was a banker. He was the president of the Private Bankers Association in his state in the United States. He had a banking license, and it was a man of considerable integrity and means. He put his life into the effort to help Pakistan, and he was driven into bankruptcy by the fraud of NAB, which Sir Anthony Evans found. It is rare. I have never, let me tell you on the camera, never in my legal or business or academic career, never have I come across a judgment in which the judge says a government and its Accountability Anti-Corruption Bureau have conspired in order to defraud the people that they have hired to go and find stolen money. I think you might want to reflect on that.
Mr. Muswi, one strange thing I find is, I've talked to people who were there in the Pakistani High Commission when the settlement thing was going on. I talked to people who were there. I've tried talking to a lot of people in NAB. I've listened to all your interviews. And somehow, everybody seems to have forgotten the name of any NAB officer who was involved either in the dialogues or in the transactions. And nobody seems to remember anyone. Could you Could you remember any name of any particular person and saying, okay, these were the NAB officers we dealt with at any different stages, and then these guys might have done whatever wrong or whatever, even if you don't want to say that. But could we have any names of any NAB officers involved in this whole transactions and process?
Look, I'm not going to engage in a media trial of anybody. The presumption of innocence is an absolute prerequisite of the rule of law. And if I start making accusations against individuals on television, that will be a violation.
No, I'm not asking you to accuse anyone. All I'm saying is we would like if you can give us names of people you dealt with during your interactions. We just name that, then we can do our own things and find out whether somebody did right or wrong. Right now, when we ask NAB, they tell us, you know, it was so long ago, we don't know. We ask anybody, everybody in this transaction, nobody mentions anybody's name. Just people who are dealing with this whole thing.
But what does that tell you? A NAB is supposed to be the paragon of transparency and accountability, and they're hiding the names of public officials who are getting paid from the public treasury. What does that tell you?
Why don't you share the names? I mean, there's nothing wrong in that. You can tell me I dealt with Officer A, B, C, these guys. Why don't you tell us?
In a context in which I'm saying NAB was a fraudulent enterprise engaged in assisting the thieves who have milked Pakistan, anyone I mention is going to be the subject of a witch hunt. I'd rather give them a right to have a fair trial. I do not engage in a media circus. When politicians throw mud at me, like this foolish man Shahzad Akbar had done, and I'm happy to name him and talk about him. And he has brought the damnation upon himself by being so foolish as to say that a court judgment is tantamount to an attempt at skimming money off the people of Pakistan. He's not even aware that this is taking money from NAB, which is supposed to have been, its coffers are supposed to be full, not of the taxpayers' money, they're supposed to be full of the thieves' money. So I'm hardly skimming off the taxpayer if I'm asking to be paid what the court has ordered the government of Pakistan to pay me. I mean, happy to engage in names when they've come into the public domain.
Mr. Muswi, just now you painted Mr. Jerry James in beautiful colors, that he was a man of integrity and all that. Then when you revived Broadsheet and then you went for all these things, then why was a case filed in District Court, Delaware, Colorado, against the state for all the things and documents and blah, blah, and in which he is being accused of certain wrongdoings? Then why this case later in 2011?
Because we needed the documents. Jerry James, unfortunately, he broke away from us and he defrauded us. You know that. The whole point, the judge found that Jerry James, Tariq Malick, and officers of NAB and the government of Pakistan defrauded Broadsheet, and that's why we needed to get the documents, the further documents which were with Jerry James, and that's why we brought a court action to secure them, and we did secure them. The court came again on our side. Not a single one of the court cases we've done in this matter have we lost. We won every single one of them, including the one in Colorado that you're referring to. It's a minor point. It's simply getting back the documents that belong to us.
Okay. You said Mr. Jerry James died in poverty. Now, even in the decision, it talks about, you know, he got almost 3.75 million was paid in 2008 to him. So how much do you think out of that money was actually kept by him and the rest was siphoned back to corrupt NAB officers and government officials from Pakistan who were facilitating all that? Because the way that deal was done, the way that settlement agreement was done, it was like everybody was in a hurry to put a lot of money in that fake transaction and make some good money. So where did the money go?
Well, first of all, it was 1.5 million. It wasn't 3.78 or anything. You better ask the people at NAB. First of all, why did they pay him? If you look at the settlement document, I can tell you a first-year law student would see that's a fraud. Broadsheet was a company in the Isle of Man. NAB went and settled via Broadsheet Gibraltar, which doesn't exist. It has never existed. Yeah. There has never been a Broadsheet Gibraltar. Into a company turned up in Colorado as called Steeplechase. which had nothing to do with broadsheet. Now, this brilliant Supreme Court advocate, Mr. Ahmed Bilal Sufi, when he came to see me, I told him, Mr. Sufi, we cannot settle on behalf of broadsheet because broadsheet is in liquidation. The record on the court shows, and the judge agreed that my statement was correct and Sufi's statement was not. He did not believe Sufi. I told Mr. Sufi in plain English that broadsheet was in liquidation. He could not settle with it. He went and settled with it. I told him Jerry James has nothing to do with broadsheet anymore. He went and saw Jerry James. And I ask you to look at the documents of the settlement. There are sentences that are missing. There are gaps. And then the Prime Minister of Pakistan has signed that settlement document. The head of NAB has settled that document. If you wanted evidence, if you wanted evidence of fraud, if you wanted evidence of fraud, just look at the documents that was signed. You're absolutely right. They were in a hurry. They were in a hurry to settle, in inverted commas. It's a claim that couldn't be settled. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because they knew. When they came to me, I said, I'm willing to settle IAR because it's in good standing, but I cannot, and nobody, even our maker, the Almighty, cannot settle broadsheet for the simple reason that it's in liquidation. We're in the process of reviving it out of liquidation and putting it in a good standing, appointing a liquidator, which we've done, and then you can come to settle it.
Mr. Musawi, जी यहाँ पे थोड़ी सी break लगाएंगे. अब जल्दी से अपने काम करके आ जाएं. But we have got a lot more to discuss. Welcome back to the show. Are you telling me that, because I talked to Mr. Sufi today and he told me that when the government was making those final settlements and all that, they had taken the lawyers out of the whole equation and he doesn't know who did what and what NAB team decided and settled the whole thing. Are you telling me that you told Ahmed Bilal Sufi before Pakistan government had settled with Broadsheet Colorado that they couldn't do it and that it was in liquidation and this was not possible? You told him prior to that?
I told him in April, May of 2007, when he came to see me, that it could not be settled and it was not settled, it could not settle. And the issue came up in the proceedings. I invite you to look at the transcript of the hearing before Sir Anthony Evans. This was a contentious issue and NAB's lawyers did their best to convince the judge, and the judge says, on this, I'm on the side of Mr. Musavi's evidence. It's in there in black and white, it's on the transcript, and it's in the judgment. The judge accepted that I had told Mr. Sufi that the government of Pakistan could not settle with Broadsheet. The judge accepted that, and I can see why it was very important for NAB's lawyers to try to throw some doubt on that. The judge saw through it and he dismissed it. He examined Mr. Sufi's evidence. Now, that does not mean that what Sufi is saying about he having been pushed out of the whole thing isn't right. I'm not privy to what happened. I am inclined to believe Sufi in this strict sense, that after he had made the arrangements, he was pushed out. I'm inclined to believe that for one reason and one reason alone. I cannot believe that a man of Sufi's understanding of the law would agree to go along with that kind of an agreement. And yet, the other side of the story is also true, namely that Mr. Sufi had been warned in clear and explicit terms, and it's in the judgment of Sir Anthony Evans that I had told Mr. Sufi that the broadsheet is not in a state to be settled with. And yet somehow NAB went and settled with it. Only Allah knows why and the reason why and where the money went. I don't know. All I know is Tariq Malick knew that the company was in liquidation and Jerry James knew that it was in liquidation. And Mr. Sufi knew that it was in liquidation because I told him.
That makes a lot of sense, because I'm sure when he must have raised that point, that's precisely the reason why he was edged out. Because I've known him for a long time also, and he was very categorical about it. And he said, you know, I was like taken out. We were just, the lawyers were removed from that after that. Now, have you been Sorry.
That's consistent. That's consistent with what he said to the court, and I'm inclined to believe that, yes.
Yeah. Have you been asked now, or did you now offer in a serious way to the government to revive the contract? Because The impression being given over here is, okay, Mr. Musavi had a nice run in the first go, so he's making all this noise, so he gets the contract again and makes another go, and you know, that's the kind of talk that's going on over here, with all due respect.
Well, why would I want to have another go and be thrown out in 2003 and have to fight to 2021 in order to get paid? Why would I want to do that? I mean, does that make sense? You think I'm 21 years old and I have another 21 years on this planet before the Almighty takes me? And if he does, if he gives me another 21 years, you think I want to spend it in fighting now? No, thank you, but no thank you. The genesis of that discussion is simply that we were alerted through our intelligence sources that money was sent from Saudi Arabia to a bank in Southeast Asia, and we alerted the government of Pakistan. And we thought if they had a scintilla of integrity, they would show some interest in knowing about it. When I saw Mr. Shahzad Akbar, he wasn't in the least bit interested. When I told him about the fake general who tried to shake us down, he wasn't in the least bit interested. What he was interested in, can you give us a discount? And I said, court orders are not the bazaar in which you haggle over the price of a carpet. Mr. Akbar, you're supposed to be a lawyer. You're supposed to show some respect for the rule of law. The rule of law is defined by obeying orders of the court. Now, are you going to get better for Pakistan by negotiating a $2 million discount from me? Or are you going to do better by chasing the $1 billion that we have on reasonable belief and information we believe is there? That's the genesis and the provenance of the story that we were seeking another contract from the government of Pakistan. Now, my masters are the people of Pakistan, not the government of Pakistan.
Mr. Musavi,
my services
on a scale of 1 to 10, how credible would you rate this information about 1 billion? And if I were to ask you, what is the real probability of this money being, this asset being recovered?
At the time when we alerted them, 99.9%. Today, probably 0%. If I had $1 billion and people were talking about it in the media, I wouldn't hang around. I would take that money and run with it. So the answer to your question on a probability of 1 to 10, 10 out of 10 at the time when we alerted them, about 0.00001 at the evening when we're having this conversation with you.
What is the total value of assets or monies that were received or recovered on with your efforts? What was the amount that the Pakistan government got back?
We were on the trail of billions. We had found the footprints of billions of dollars. I don't mean millions. You heard it right. Billions. A billion is 1,000 million. We were on the trail of billions of dollars. We found the footprint of billions of dollars of money that smelled. Money that is clean doesn't smell. In London, they say they trade trillions of dollars on foreign exchange. It doesn't smell. But billions of dollars of smelly money we were on the trail of. We were sabotaged and we were prevented from going after it. And the judge agreed that that's exactly what happened. Every time we came to close to money that NAB had no idea about, we were sabotaged. We were either directly asked to remove that person from our target, or in the case of Sherpal, when we froze the account and we alerted the government of Pakistan, you know what they did? Instead of coming and taking the money back to Pakistan, instead of doing as we'd requested, namely instruct the government of Jersey to seize that money and send it back, you know what they did? I'll tell you what they did. They opened the account, they gave the money back to Sherpa, and they appointed the Minister of Interior of Pakistan. That should be a complete and comprehensive answer to your question.
You said whenever we got close to money, NAB would sort of work it out and actually destroy the effort. Was that most of that money, was it with politically exposed people, or was it other businessmen and stuff like that? How many people were you close to on, let's say, was it a set of 10 people, 20 people, 15, like what?
We came within a whisker of freezing the accounts of 27 either individuals or their alter egos or their companies or their front operations. And I maintained that we came within a whisker of returning to my masters, the people of Pakistan, billions of dollars. We were sabotaged by the crooks masquerading as a National Accountability Bureau, by the crooks masquerading as a government of Pakistan.
Mr. Musavi, can I ask you two mean questions? Please allow my bluntness. I love it when you talk about people of Pakistan as being, and you being, thinking nicely about them. We're grateful for that. But two questions come in. If you are so concerned about the people of Pakistan, why wouldn't you tell us the people you dealt with so people of Pakistan could find out something about it? Why don't you release all the documents that are pertaining to all these things, judgments and everything, so we could go through them and try to sift the truth? Why don't you name names? Your contract is over now. Why don't you tell us who you were about to freeze within whiskers of freezing the accounts and stuff like that? Why not share that information? Especially when you know you claim to have been wronged.
Well, there's a long answer to that. There's a short answer to that. The short answer is what the people of Pakistan are really suffering from is the absence of law. Where there's no law, there's lawlessness. Where there's lawlessness, there's jungle. In the jungle, those with the biggest teeth and the longest claws are the ones that kill and take everything. The people of Pakistan are best served by the rule of law. The rule of law requires the presumption of innocence. And because of that, I am not prepared to engage in a trial by the media and hanging up people by the media. I have seen people murdered in Pakistan because their name came out in the media. I'm not prepared to do that. I rather say the presumption of innocence is absolute. The real interest of the people of Pakistan lies in enhancement and the furtherance and the advancement of the rule of law.
I want to believe everything that Kaveh Musavi says. I just need one thing. Can you name me one other major success that you've achieved in terms of asset recovery and all? Specific project, a specific endeavor that can back up your claims of being one of the best in this field?
Well, asset recovery is part of the human rights work. Human rights is about protection of the interests of the people versus the thieves who become governments. Those thieves eventually mutate into mafias that become governments. When the Supreme Court threw out Nawaz Sharif, the Chief Justice referred to the novel by Mario Puzo, The Godfather. In the fight against these criminal mafias, a small part of it is the fight against thieves who steal money. You want to look at my record? Look what I achieved in Sweden. I managed to arrest, as a result of deep investigation, a man who was traveling on a false identity. He was one of the most notorious torturers and murderers serving the Islamic Republic of Iran. Google it, and you'll find on the 9th of November 2019, Mr. Hamid Nouri, when he arrived in the Stockholm airport, he was arrested by the War Crimes Unit of the Swedish police, thanks to me, to Kaveh Musavi. You wanted one example, I've given you one example. And his job as a judicial officer of Iran was to go around and see the families of people and shake them down and change a death sentence to a 15-year sentence, and then shake them down again a year later and reduce that to 0. That's the nature of the judiciary that I've been fighting in Iran. I've fought many other judiciaries in Mexico, in other countries. You want an example? Google it. There's a big article in the Washington Post. The Times in London covered it. I was the person who came within a whisker of arresting a second torturer last summer in Germany, Mr. Mansouri, and he fled Germany because of my efforts, and he was murdered in Romania. I didn't murder him, the Iranian government murdered him. So I am used to these big fights. I know how to fight the mafias. Pakistani mafia is, by and large, the thieving mafia. It doesn't really engage in the kind of murderous assassination and tyrannies that the next door neighbor does. But however mighty these mafias think they are, I've got a message for them. The law is mightier than them. So that's an example.
Do you have any higher hopes of Mr. Imran Khan?
Sorry?
Do you have any higher hopes of Mr. Imran Khan as the Prime Minister of Pakistan?
Do I have any what for?
Higher hopes. A high hope that he would make a difference. You've dealt with so many people.
I have to admit, and on the record through your camera, from what I've seen, it is a breath of fresh air seeing Imran Khan. And I'm not saying this because he's an Oxford man and I'm an Oxford man. I'm saying it because, you know, when you've been at this game for a long time, you smell it in the air and you feel it. And I smell it in the air, and I have high hopes that Imran is gonna...
When was the last time you talked to him?
That's confidential. I can't discuss that.
Days, weeks? That much you can indicate.
No, that's he was at Oxford. I was at Oxford. We have mutual friends. Let's just say leave it at that. But what I can say is, from a professional point of view, he's a politician where General Amjad was not. General Amjad was a man of supreme integrity. General Amjad was a man who I know left NAB with a broken heart, because I saw him at the hearing before Sir Anthony Evans, and I could see this as a man who was speaking from the heart. Amjad was a military man. He was not a politician, so clearly he was not able to negotiate the minefield of politics. He may have been very good at negotiating a literal minefield, being a general, but clearly he wasn't a politician and he didn't survive. I'm hoping that Imran will be able to negotiate the cesspit of Iran, the politics of Pakistan, and he'll be able to save the people of Pakistan from the mafiocracy, forgive my language, my unparliamentary language, the mafiocracy that has engaged in the gang rape of the country over the last 70 years.
Mr. Musavi, thank you very much for taking time and talking to us. जी आपने बात सुनी, मुसावी साहब की सारी बातें सुनी, फैसला तो आपने कर, लेकिन 2-3 सवाल बड़े इंपॉर्टेंट हैं। एक तो यह है कि इन्होंने, इमरान खान साहब ने भी कहा है कि हम इनसे बात करेंगे। हमें एक तो ये वाज़े होना चाहिए, क्योंकि मुसावी ने इस पर क्लियर जवाब नहीं दिया क्योंकि इमरान खान से बात हुई है या नहीं हुई। वी नीड टू नो कि क्या प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफ पाकिस्तान का डायरेक्ट रब्ता हुआ है मुसावी साहब के साथ, और ये किस किस्म के रवाबत हैं कि ज़फ़र अली जैसा बंदा उठता है वो भी प्राइम मिनिस्टर को मिल लेता है और दूसरे लोग भी मिल लेते हैं। मुसावी साहब हैं, उनका हमें नहीं पता कि उनकी बात हुई है नहीं हुई है। ये बड़े डूबियस एलिमेंट्स हैं सारे के अंदर। इसकी बहुत कॉम्प्रीहेंसिव इंक्वायरी होनी चाहिए। और अगेन मैं बार बार कहता हूँ, फ्रॉम डे वन एक ऐसी कंपनी जिसकी हिस्ट्री नहीं थी, एक ऐसी कंपनी है जो 29,000 पाउंड के ऊपर डिज़ोल्व हो जाती है, एक ऐसी कंपनी जो खुद पार्टनर्स एक दूसरे को नहीं पकड़ सके, वो एक दूसरे से फ्रॉड कर रहे हैं, उस कंपनी के ऊपर सारे पाकिस्तान की इंटेग्रिटी या उस पर आप सवाल उठने शुरू हो जाएं, तो ये बड़ा एक सीरियस क्वेश्चन है जिसको देखना होगा। ये बड़ी डिटेल्ड प्रोब चाहिए और इसमें कोई भी ना बचे, क्योंकि इट्स स्मैक्स ऑफ करप्शन। जिस दिन से शुरू हुआ और आज तक इस पर करप्शन का बहुत ज़्यादा तासुर मिल रहा है। इजाज़त दीजिए, अल्लाह हाफ़िज़।